What's happening, everyone? Hey, welcome to part 2 of episode 1 of Two Drunks with a Mic. Hey, if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe. You can subscribe by email at twodrunkswithamic.com, or if email isn't your thing, you can also find us on Stitcher, Apple Podcast, TuneIn, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and on Android. Also, please help us end the affliction by sharing this podcast. Now, part 2.
Oh, you already had that thought. Okay.
Yeah, I'm like, why? And so I dumped. There was like 2-3 more left in the bottle, and I dumped them down the toilet, flushed it, and counted that as a win, right? But of course, I think probably a couple hours later, I was over at the liquor store, getting me some Jim Beam or something. But once I probably had it on a clock, right? I'm like, okay, those opiates, they're out of my system now. I'm clear to go drink. But yeah, man, it's, when I was in that program, there was three of us that they recognized as the type of alcoholics that I was. There was me, this other dude, and then there was this other guy. It was a men's program. They're all guys. But when we got to talking and comparing, the way that we treated alcohol and in our lives and what it had done to our lives, the behavior was almost identical, and we were different ages. But one of the dudes was quite a bit older than me. The other guy was maybe a few years older than me. I might use 5 fingers to count the number of people I can tell you that made it out successfully out of this program at the time that I went through there. And on the other hand, man, I'd have to get a calculator out probably to tell you how many dudes had died. Guys, it really hits home, man, because when you're in a program like that and you're getting it and you're really starting to gain that hope, and hope can sustain you. Hope can keep you alive. And I remember, going back to my bed at that detox center, it was after that third night, man, I had hope. If there's something stronger than you that can destroy you, there's something stronger than you that can save you. And that is where you have to put your hope, is in that. Randy, you and I are Christ followers. But one thing I always heard in the rooms was guys say, well, I'm pissed off at God. And then they tell their story. It's like, oh, okay, well, I kind of see where they're coming by that, man. They're coming by that honest. This is just where they're at. But the guy that could say, I'm pissed off at God, but I understand that I'm not God, there was hope for that guy. It was those guys that be like, nah, I don't need God, or admit that there's something greater than me or whatever. And you just look at him and go, oh, okay, well, we'll see you in a month. Hopefully you ain't going to die, or whatever. You just know. So for me, yeah, I went to AA meetings. I went to NA meetings. I really liked a lot of the components in the meetings. The tenets, I believe, of AA, the 12 steps, I think they could benefit anybody in their life, making amends, just doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. Where I took issue with AA was, where they started censoring you, not wanting to mention God or Christ or anything like that in the rooms. And that was okay. That's their journey, man. But I was mature enough at that point, in my recovery and in my spiritual walk, where I'm like, good for you, man. I'm going to go do something else. So for me, it is service to my church. It is service to those things. However, I don't ever feel like I'm above not needing an AA meeting.
Exactly.
I could go there and learn something from a newcomer and be like, man, I forgot about that. Yes. And that's one of the things in my mind that I never want to do is forget, where I've been, because now all these years later, and you have 15, 16 years, that's what you have. You have your experience, your strength, and your hope. Where we were, how we got here, and what keeps us here. And that might look different for a lot of different people, but one thing I always heard out there, Randy, and you might disagree with this. I'm sure somebody listening might disagree with it too. But the one thing that I don't believe that can happen with an addict is I don't think you can ever be cured. I don't think you're ever cured of something like alcoholism. And the reason I say that is I'm an alcoholic, right? From a disease model, yeah, it's like diabetes. You gotta, you're given a diagnosis of diabetes, the doctor's going to tell you got a choice. You can live with it, and it's going to maybe take your legs and you're going to die. And it's going to be a pretty brutal death. Or you can live with it, take your insulin, treat yourself, eat better, do these types of things, and you can actually live a really productive life. Okay. You have a choice. You're faced with a choice right there. And to me, that's the type of disease that I believe something like alcoholism or drug addiction is. I'm given a diagnosis. You're an alcoholic. Okay, I'm an alcoholic. I admit that. You need to treat it. Okay. And we treat it by doing what we've been speaking about in this program. Mm-hmm. It's not cure. I can't go into a bar and sit down and drink one beer. If I were cured, that might not be a problem. But man, let me tell you, I question anybody that says, well, I was a diehard alcoholic and hey, I can sit down and drink a beer or two. And I'm like, hey, you weren't the brand of alcoholic that I was, Yeah. And I would strongly caution anybody, that is seriously looking at any kind of recovery, thinking that's a realistic end for them, where they can control it to the point where, oh yeah, man, yeah, I can go to a party, smoke a little weed, do this. Oh, you go ahead. And hopefully I don't read your obituary, mm-hmm. And that happens all the time, man. I see that. I'm good, man. I'm good. But you know what, Randy? I think it was something you told me years ago, man, and I know this to be true with alcohol, and I know it to be true with heroin and other things too. So alcohol, you can abstain from it, but once you pick up again, it comes back with a vengeance. Yes. And that's what happened. That's what happened to me in 2006, in 2007. Exactly. Okay. It came back, dude, and it's like, boom.
Yeah. So when they talk about it doing push-ups while you're sober, that is so accurate, man. This disease, you're absolutely right. I stayed sober for, I think, 60 days, man, and I relapsed. And I'm going to tell you, man, I couldn't even believe where I wound up that night. Like, it never was that bad. You know what I mean? And, you're absolutely right.
Well, it's like the heroin addict. They say the problem, and I had one of my counselors who was telling me this. He was a heroin addict from way back. He says that the thing that gets them is that they build this tolerance up over years of using, and they go by X amount, they shoot it up, and that's just to stay well. They need that, and it keeps going. But what happens is when they stop for an extended period of time and they go back, in their mind, they're like, oh, I'm going to go down, get that exact same amount, do their deal, rig up, shoot up, and it friggin' ODs them. They just can't handle it anymore, and
you would think they'd be a little smart about it, huh?
Yeah.
Sometimes,
that's one of the things that always used to trip me out about those guys. And I had most of my friends in that program, they were all heroin addicts, and good dudes. But, some of them I've known for years, even before the program, knew for years, and they talk about, being dope sick or they call it cotton fever or whatever it was, where they get a little piece of cotton up in there. I'm like, oh, dang, dude, I couldn't deal with that, man. But that was their life. Or filtering it something through a cigarette filter.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, dude,
Yeah, man.
that's hardcore, man. You know,
it is.
I can't do that. But I look at that responsibly, not judgmentally or hypocritically. I said, man, I'm thankful to see that they made it out of where they were too. Even though I can't relate to it, that's their journey, you know? And, yeah, it's just, I don't know, man. But yeah, I think to succinctly answer your question, man, being of service for me, was the step I took to get to where I am. And it's the steps that I take to remain where I am. And there's definitely, for me, there's a spiritual component to it. You know, I am a Christian and cling to Christ, and really am thankful every day, you know, for what God has afforded me in my life, the good and the bad. That night I ended up in Casa Esperanza. I start at that time and I look at today, and you know what? Addiction and alcoholism, there's a thread that runs from that night to where we're sitting today. And everything is connected because of that. Everything. My kid, my marriage, my stepdaughter, everything, you know, this conversation, it's all connected.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, my kid, he came from a rough place. It's a sad story, man, to think about where he came from, his biological parents, what addiction has done in their life, what, you know, and we'll talk about it later on other episodes, you know, co-occurring disorders, you know, where there's like a mental disability, you know, coexisting with addiction. That's a component there too. But I think about all of that, and you can't help but, for me anyway, you just can't help but be thankful for it.
Yeah.
And, you know, want to give it back. And I think that's like when I came to you and talked to you about that program, talked about doing this program, that's what I envisioned was, you know, meeting somebody that might be in a very hopeless situation. I don't know if they'll ever hear this. You'd hope they would, but meeting somebody in as hopeless, at their most hopeless, and giving them that hope. Because, if, you know, it's like a guy I used to say, I used to do HI panels with one time. He said, sometimes all it is just getting them to hit the pause button. Mm-hmm. You know, because
mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. You've had a knack for that, Ian. You know, I always knew that the spirit about you, you always had love in you, you know, whether, you know, it was deep down and you couldn't get it out through your alcoholism, but that's it. You know, that's what all the addicts, you know, everybody needs to find a way to get that back out of them, man, because love, you know, like what you're doing with your son and your stepdaughter and you know, love just, and it says in the Bible how, I was looking at the scripture when you were talking, but, you know, that, you know, talk about the flesh and the spirit, man. We're always after, you know, things for our flesh, man. That selfishness, you know, that bondage of self, man. And we don't even realize sometimes that's who we, you know, how selfish we really are. I mean, most of the time you don't catch, like, when you get up in the morning, dude, I mean, I don't know about you, but, you know, there comes a point, and I'm not there, I'll be honest. I don't think about what I can do for others. That's not my first thought, you know, and so that's part of recovery as well. And that comes with after going through spiritual experiences, steps, you know, what have you. Helping others in services is, everybody can do that. Everybody has a spiritual gift, and it has something to offer to somebody, man. And that right there that's where the change starts to happen. And you talked about Christ, man, and that's, I know people do. You're right. In rooms, I was told not to be bringing that up like I did, but that love that if you can really stop and think about that love he has for us, man, on that cross, man, like that, the whole resurrection, like try to really understand the amount of love that really, really is. And let's face it, Ian, every single one of us wants to be loved, man. I do, you do. I mean, we don't get that sometimes, and we seek other things for it, and we get mixed up, man. And so I like to stay in the scriptures every morning when I get up, man. I devote a good hour where everybody in my household is still sleeping, and I have to do that. I have to connect. It's part of my program, man. I have to be in the spirit, man, and not in the flesh. You talked about pornography, or that's then you start tapping into that, man. Then you start getting sick. You can stay sober, but I don't know about you, but I can't do that. I have to have, and it says in that big book, and I know you've been through that book, and that's the one thing that stuck out to me, is I was always trying to find, what exactly do I need to do here? I'll do anything. I mean, I had that willingness. Whatever. I'll take suggestions this time around. You tell me what to do, and I'm going to do it. And that's how bad I wanted it, Ian. And but it said in that book, it said spirituality is a must. And that's the only time it said a must, And I thought, you know what? That's it, man. I'm going to hang on to that for right now and find a way to live that. But anyhow,
yeah. I mean, and I think too, one of the important things that we need to mention, Randy, is that when you talk about this service, it doesn't have to be much. It's a willingness is what it comes down to. And, always when I think about a willingness, or when I think about the type of heart that it takes to be comfortable being in service and really stepping out and doing that type of thing, you have to start somewhere. You have to start setting up chairs. At least, man, I'll tell you what, just listening to what your sponsor's telling you and following his direction, that right there is part of it too. There's a story in the Bible about Abraham, and God him and his wife, they wanted a son. They were old, man. And God had promised him a son, years and years and years and years and years before. But Abraham was patient and faithful. And finally they did have a son, and this is Isaac. But then what does God ask him? He says, Isaac, take your son to the mountain and sacrifice him. And to shorten the story and to completely paraphrase it, Abraham does that. He takes Isaac up, puts him on the altar. He's getting ready to sacrifice him, and God stops him and provides the ram, and they sacrifice this ram together. A lot of people take that story and they might think, well, man, what kind of God could do that? Why would God do that? The story isn't about God. The story is about Abraham. And the story is so important that they speak about it in the New Testament, because it was Abraham. He's justified by his faith, right? It was that willingness. It was that, yes, I will follow through with this. That exercise of just having that willing heart, that openness, and just that availability, I guess, to do what's asked of you. And yeah, hopefully, we never have to, sacrifice our kids or anything like that. And that's ultimately not the point of the story. But the point of the story is having a heart like Abraham, where it's just like, okay, God, I have faith in you. I will do whatever you ask of me. And today, Randy, to put it into perspective, that's hard for a lot of people. That's hard for me, to talk about, being in really hardcore financial straits, the point where it's like we're almost going to lose our house and gotten laid off and all of this. But we sat down and we're like, man, you know what? We just need to trust God. we say it, we say we do, but do we really? And that's the type of test that, for me, just speaking of one of the hardships, that was a really tough time, man. I had my new son, was with us. There was now 4 of us in the household. We're looking at losing the house. We'd even talk to our landlords who, they were really cool and they worked with us. But it was like at the last minute, man, God brought in a job for my wife, brought me a job, and we're stronger than we've ever been. But it really broke us down to question, where we're at spiritually and stuff. But
yeah, you hit the nail on the head. That's those are tests for sure, man. And I've been through a lot of those. I feel like ever since we left Vegas, man, and I think you left around the same time, or if a little before us. But if anybody listening is wondering how to, I'm from the East, and Ian being from California, we wound up meeting in Las Vegas. We were out there during the boom in 04, 05, and all the way to, I left, I think, 2010, but I think it was probably like 06 or 07 when I met you.
No, it was in I want to say it was in 04, late 04. Yeah, because I left it was 05. Because I was back up in Oregon in January of 2006. I went up there to do that big hospital.
Okay, yeah, okay, yeah. You were in Big Jim, but anyhow, back to what we were, talking about. You're right, Ian. As soon as we start looking for things to make us, people, places, and things, we gotta definitely stay connected, man, because we're gonna have a lot more detours, trials. We need to be ready for it, man, and that's part of life, man. And I want to be, be able to share that with others, man, and that's going to help a lot of people that are wondering how recovery is, man. So.
Well, it ain't all a bed of roses.
No,
I'll tell you that. I mean, and that's the thing. That's one of the things, Randy, that there's a whole physiological aspect, to an addict, and the way that our brains are being reconfigured by whatever it is we choose to do. For me, as I can only speak as an alcoholic, and I spoke earlier about the undeniable physical compulsion that I had to drink. Even though there was a sliver of my mind left that said, no, don't. The part of me that said yes was much, much bigger, and it was growing bigger. The common sense and everything else, it slowly starts to shrink, until you get to that point of insanity, where alcohol, you're drinking or whatever it is, becomes an all-consuming endeavor. And, I had to work hard, as did anybody else that was in that program with me. We had to work hard to relearn the way that we think. Your limbic system, not to get too sciencey on it, but it's that fight or flight mechanism that we're all born with. It's the limbic system in the brain, right? And this is what is developed over a lifetime. A child doesn't know that fire is going to burn him until he touches it one time. He touches it that one time. That limbic system is now programmed to tell him to fear that fire. So he's got a choice. He can touch it and burn himself every time, or he can say, you know what, that burns me, I'm going to leave it alone. It's the fight or flight mechanism. If somebody hits you in the face, you have two choices. What were you taught? Well, were you taught to run, or were you taught to fight? Your limbic system determines that. Somebody smacks you in the face and you friggin' drill them, dude, and you stomp them into a friggin' mud hole. That is our way of thinking. So for me, what had happened is that every one of these triggers that came up, whether it's happy, sad, pissed off, whatever it was, my limbic system I was training it to respond with drinking. I'd get happy. Let's celebrate, man. Let's start drinking. Limbic system knows. Now it's hearing this thought, man, let's be happy. Let's drink. It equates that. And then pretty soon, over years and years of doing that, my response to everything was, let's drink. And pretty soon, it doesn't take any trigger. Let's drink.
Mm-hmm.
And I hated confrontation. Somebody wanted to get into a confrontation with me, an argument, a friendly argument. I didn't have friendly arguments. To me, everything escalated into a friggin' fist fight because it was like, no way, man. I'm not even going to deal with you on this level. Don't push me. Don't touch me. Don't talk to me. I'm going to respond as aggressively as I absolutely can to end you right now. And that was the way that I reacted. It took a lot of work, man, to get to the point where I could have a friendly argument or a discussion with somebody that may disagree with me and not feel that aggressive type of behavior or that wanting to go drink or that wanting to do this. And it's really just becoming an adult, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is, man. I think that we didn't mentally grow out of that, man, because I think that we were kept down from all this, the drinking and the drugging. I just thought we matured in that area. I'm like that too, Ian. To this day, I take things personal. Somebody, you talked about how you react. That's a tough one for me, man. So I grew up in a household where things were thrown around and, holes in the walls. And see, my dad, he in that era, my father was, got drafted in the Vietnam War, man. And when he came home, that's when he had family. That's when we were born. But, he carried a lot of that anger. That was what was in my house, man. And I saw growing up how he reacted, and when things went wrong, man, he got mad. So that's to this day. I people don't realize that even if you don't want to be anything like that, dude, it's like it's in your genes or something, man. And you got to really fight to break that curse, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that's my point. That's what was talking about. And that's what I don't think a lot of people, unless they specifically go to a treatment that they can really educate them on the physiological side of addiction, they don't understand that. Yeah, your brain isn't wired quite right, but it's wired how it's programmed, and and this substance is reprogramming that part of your brain. That alcohol, for instance, takes over every function that you have. It's the only substance that affects every cell in your body simultaneously. It's one of two substances that'll kill you when you try to detox from it. It's not something that, in my estimation, can be controlled if a person is, maybe has an addictive personality, maybe has in my case, I have a physical reaction to this stuff. I know I had to take some, about 3 years ago or something, I had to take some cold medicine. I had here on the Central Coast, man, I live in Santa Maria, and it's an agricultural area, and there's a lot of dust and stuff that flies around. Anyway, I took some of this stuff and I started feeling really, really weird. And it was my fault because I looked at it. I'm like, oh man, this stuff has alcohol in it. Not much, man, but it was enough, dude, to start messing with me. I need to be very, very careful when it comes to that stuff. The one thing that I can tell you, Randy, is that the idea of drinking that's been eliminated from my way of thinking. And I didn't come about that on my own. That was something that I wholeheartedly believe God has removed from my way of thinking. I may have a bad reaction to a situation. I may want to, punch something or pound something or kick something or, have an infantile reaction to something. but the reactionary go and drink doesn't even enter my mind. I couldn't care less about drinking, man. I don't mind if people want to drink around me until they start acting like idiots. And then it's like, yeah, you know what, dude, just go away, you know? But I've had, you know, like I mentioned before, I've had a lot of opportunities where, you know, and a lot of people don't know my story, especially at my church. Some do, because I was asked to speak there a couple of years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I was asked to speak there, give my testimony, and I did. And that's where, you know, it came out, you know, this is where I've been, you know. I was able to speak at a fundraiser for the Santa Barbara Rescue Mission a couple of years ago now, I guess. And, you know, there's like 400 people there, and I gave them my testimony. And there's something about, you know, laying it all out there to the public of saying, yeah, man, this is who I am. This is my name. And you know what? I'm an alcoholic. And it gets people's attention, but it doesn't bother me in the least. I'm not sitting there trying to hide this and say, well, you know what? I used to do this and somehow sugarcoat it for people. It's like, no, man, this is who I was. This is where I've been. This is what got me out. And you know what? Because like you said 100 times, man, since I've known you, this addiction thing, this alcoholism, whatever your pet term is for it, it's life and death. It's either gonna take you out, or you're gonna have to live with it for the rest of your life. And either way, you're a prisoner. So this whole idea of like, well, I'm gonna gain, you know, I'm going to live my life. And this is something that I fell into, man. I wanted to live a life that I wanted to. I wanted to have the freedom, right? Big air quotes right there. I wanted to have the freedom to do what I want to do all the time. Yeah. You're a sucker, dude, if you think that works. Because whether or not you're freedom's an illusion, man. And you're always going to be beholden to something. But there, you know what? If we're doing it right, we are beholden to our loved ones. We're beholden to our families. We're beholden to our duty as members of society and human beings. We want to do the right thing. So you're beholden to that. But that's okay. But it's when it starts becoming, you know, that little rock, you know, or that little baggie or that little bottle or this is your life. So that's how strong that addiction can be, Randy. You take everything that's in your life right now, everything that you can think of, your business, the sale of your business, your family, your daughter, your kids, your son up in Oregon, all of these things, your brother. Think about that for a second, man. And then look over and find one of the smallest things you could find on your desk, and that thing will destroy it instantly. You know, that's how insidious addiction is. But, you know, one thing that I talked about before with you, what we did in the program is I went through, and I'll pull it out one time and we can really talk about it on one of these episodes, but it's called the FASTER scale. And I forget all the points on the acronym. It's FASTER spelled out. I remember that the R at the end, though, is relapse, right? And the exercise was you go through the first one and you write down and identify a couple things, you know, and then on the A, you do the same thing. And then on the S, the same thing. T, same thing. E, same thing. And it's basically a roadmap of your way of thinking down to relapse. But the beauty of it is the idea behind the exercise is to identify in a meaningful way what gets you thinking the way you're thinking at that particular point. Identify it and deal with it. And then guess what? So maybe you're down on S. Maybe you're down on S and you recognize it. Well, guess what? You can get right back off and you can go back to the top. It's a ladder, but you never want to get to R, you know, because the thing is people say, well, you know, it's an interesting thing, man. One time I asked somebody, and I'd like to ask you, when you relapsed, was it something that was instant, or was it something that, if you look back on it, it just gradually built up over time? Because I'm of the opinion that relapse isn't a one-time occurrence. It's not an event. It's a process, and that's, I think, where we get into this self-evaluation, the self aspect of recovery. So it's like, yeah, we need to, like you said, you get up in the morning, you do your devotion, you do your prayer, you do those things, you get right with the world, I guess you could say. And then you're ready to take it on. You're asking God, man, go before me, in this day. And just, I know things are going to come up. One thing I hesitate to ask for is smooth sailing, man, because I don't think we grow from that. But, just ask, hey, go before me, God, and be in this situation that I'm going to run into. So you have the personal aspect of it, but then there is this idea that recovery is one of those things that you keep by giving it away. And that's the service aspect of it, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, we have a personal mission to maintain what we have inside, rechecking our way of thinking. Because, my old way of thinking, as far as drinking's concerned, might be gone. But that doesn't mean that I can sit there and drink a beer.
Good point. Good point.
I'd be a goner, man. Because there was a lot of reasons why I drank, but whatever.
Well, that sums it up, Ian. I just wanted to. I'm starting to get a bad connection because it's raining quite a bit here outside. But so we're gonna wrap this thing up. But I want to thank you, man, for sharing your story. And I for anybody out there listening, man, and you're wrapped up, man. You're in the gates of hell. Stop, get down on your knees, man, and pray to ask God to use you as a tool, man, and get you out of where you're at, because you want to experience what life has to offer, because we're all gifted, man. We're all born with some type of spiritual gift that we can use to glorify Him, man. And when we get to that point, man, all that other stuff, it goes bye-byes, man. And that love will conquer that. But anyhow, let's see. I want to read this verse before we shut this down, Ian. I read it this morning, and that I wanted to, it kind of stuck out, and kind of like, where we're at in our recovery. Anyhow, it was in Psalm 139, 23 and 24. It says, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my anxieties, and see if there's any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." And we need to, what that tells me is just, we need help, man. We need to ask God for help, man. And that's the start of this. But it's just a crazy world right now, Ian. Every time every time I turn that TV on or listen to what's the latest news, it's just going nuts, man. I don't know what to think of it. And it's just making me stronger in my faith, because there's nothing on this earth that you could turn to, man, at this point, man. They've taken God out of so much that I don't know what people, it's just, I don't know. What's your take on that, Ian? I mean, people don't know where to turn, man. It's not available like it used to be. It's not talked about, man. But
well, I think
people on a daily basis are getting more sick. The mental issues are on the rise, man. I feel like people are just about to lose it, man.
Randy, I don't think that it's not a removal of God, so per se. Yeah, they don't want you to mention God, or they censor that type of stuff, but it's a replacement of God. It's this idea that you can replace God with yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you look at every friggin' thing on Facebook, it's like, hey, you're the hero of your story. You're this, you're that. It's like, man, good luck.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, Randy, expectations are just resentments waiting to happen. So if you put your expectations in yourself, if you really, really, really are honest with yourself and you look back at everything that you've tried to accomplish in your life on your own and not taken, you can accomplish things. Let's not get too unrealistic. But generally, people don't accomplish things on their own. If you want to start a business or you want to build a website, you want to, do these things, you can try to do it on your own. But eventually the smart guy, the one that really gets up and running, is the one that relies on the help of other people or, the experts in the field. You want to build a website? Go talk to somebody. Maybe pay them a few bucks to build you a website. Maybe do these things. So from that aspect, yes, you can accomplish things. What I'm talking about is this idea that you alone are the captain of your ship and you can create your destiny.
That's it. Yeah, that's Satan all over right there.
Yeah, you take God out of the equation, you remove God. And I'll tell you what, man, I was the captain of my ship. I created my own destiny, and it got me in a friggin' bed in a detox center at the end of it all with nothing left. Mm-hmm. And it's like I said in that first episode that John Gabbard, he always used to say, but when I first heard it, it used to piss me off all the time because I never understood it. Because, it was your best thinking that got you here in the first place. I didn't understand that until I was, farther along in the program and really thought, okay, I get that now. I get it. But what had happened up to the point of my understanding was I was learning to rethink. I was learning relearning the proper way of thinking, adulting, I guess,
Yeah, yeah.
But again, Randy, that's not one of those things that we can quantify in a measure. You can't put a metric to it and say, you need to be, at this level at this point in your life. I don't think that's a healthy thing to be, because I can't measure my success against your success. I can't, and nobody should do that. When you're in a room, you might hear somebody, and this is one of the big things about going to those rooms, and which did help me in the beginning is that, you do feel alone. You do feel completely helpless. And probably 95% of those people in there you can't relate to. But there might be that one person that's going to say something that you're like, damn, man, that's my life. I want what he has, or I want what she has, and then you go to that person, and that's how those connections are formed. And hopefully that person's solid, and they're like, yeah, man, I'll sponsor you. And that's how it works. Mm-hmm. And they might have four or five other sponsees. Some of these people have a lot, and they're able to do that. And that helps them in their program.
Yeah.
But then the idea, the model is hopefully, I'll just use myself as an example. Say I go up to that person. I say, man, I want what you have. Show me what you got. They share their experience. They share their strength, and they share their hope with me. And then I start growing. I start developing, go get my chip, whatever, have a birthday, have all that stuff. And then, I get a sponsee and I pass it on. And that to me is the entire model of something like AA. And NA and stuff like that. But one of the things that did really kind of took me out of that too, Randy, was this kind of exclusive thing that I hear in AA or NA, right? You can only identify as an alcoholic when you go to an AA meeting. When you're at NA, you have to identify as an addict. I'm here to tell you, man, I'm an alcoholic, but I identify more as an addict.
I've always, my grandfather was in AA, and he used to be so hardcore about that when people brought up drugs. And I always, I still understood why they felt so strong about that. Was that like an ego thing? I mean, I mean, I don't know. If you want to help others, man, if your story, if you're more whatever it takes, man, I want to see you get sober, man. If you got to bring up that you used to do cocaine when you drank, you know, by God, do it, man. You know, that's part of his story, man. I knew a guy that brought that up, and he just kind of said it was a white substance that he would use that allowed him to drink even more, or something like that. And people got all up, and I just, you know, I can understand that, Ian. That did bother me, man, and I don't have the answers, but I didn't like that either. I didn't, you know, especially when somebody was struggling in there, man. And you don't know, by you getting upset about that, it might send that guy right back out and say, you know what, I don't belong here. And he starts using it, and all of a sudden he's 8 feet under.
I think that what happens is that when we stumble on that exclusivity within those rooms, you alienate people that may or give people the wrong impression that, oh, you know what, that's okay. So I can quit drinking, but I could still, do whatever over here. They try to live that, as long as I give up drinking, this'll work better. It might uncomplicate some things, I don't know, but you're still living your old way of thinking. And the idea behind it is to completely give up any of that.
Exactly. You know? And I think that they're starting to steer towards more what you was talking about. I mean, I don't. You're in a different side of the, world here, but they seem to, because today there's much more addicts, man. You're not going to see as many alcoholics as you will. You know, you're going to see a lot more heroin addicts, and you're going to see they're in AA for whatever reason. You know, I've been in the NA meetings, and God bless them, man. That was when I was out in Vegas. You know, in Vegas, man, was a land of, I don't know how it is now. It's been so long, but, there was so much meth going on out there when I was out there. But so everybody that was in NA had like a meth story they were talking about, like staying up for 4 days. And, you know, they were just kind of, seemed to me, they were glorifying it, man. They just start laughing and, I just thought, man, damn, you know, I'm crazy too, but damn, man, that's not going to help me.
No, man.
You know, that sounds like fun to me, you know. I need to, because like you said earlier, it's life and death, man. Once I start thinking something was funny back then, it's just one of those steps that going towards a relapse, but there's nothing funny about it, man.
No.
And I know those tweakers, they're a breed of their own, and
man. Dude, and the best case scenario for a lot of those dudes is to get busted and go to prison. Hopefully they can make it through the other side and come out. And I worked with a guy in Colorado back in the 90s that he did 5 or 6 years over here in California, for meth distribution. That was before it got big, but man, at the time that I worked with that guy, man, he taught me everything that I needed to know to make meth. Yeah, he liked talking to it. He wasn't in that lifestyle anymore. He wasn't doing it. But I think that I don't know that he was ever using real hardcore. Maybe he was. I forget. But he kind of had that sort of this was this. When I was in that detox center, they had a couple kids in there detoxing from that stuff, dude. And they get that crystals and stuff on their skin, man, and they stink really bad. And I'm sure I wasn't smelling real good either. But I'm looking at that, all horrified, man. That God, how could somebody do that to themselves? And it's a freaking bit hypocritical for me.
Yeah, you're right. You're right, man. I mean, I can remember him being in Vegas, just going to a gas station and getting like a pack of smokes or something. You always know, man. You don't have to see one. I could hear somebody going from one end to the other and then back over to the same place that he was. And I knew right then and there, that's a tweaker behind me. All I had to do, you know what I mean? Like you could hear him thank God I didn't mess around with that stuff, because I had a guy telling me that it feels like you kind of like almost like cocaine. I did a lot of coke in my time, but it's almost like they feel like they just won the lottery or something, man. It just does something to you that you just feel great, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
you know, that was, I don't know, man. That's beyond me, dude. I don't know. I don't know.
God bless
brother.
him. You know, and I've seen those guys recover too, though. I had a good friend out there out in Vegas, man. He did timeshares. He smoked a lot of meth, man, and it took him a long time to bounce back. But sometimes they don't, though, man. Sometimes, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, he suffered some permanent damage, that's for sure. But I don't know how he's doing, man. But you know, that's the thing about all that, Ian. You know, it takes a spiritual experience. I'm a firm believer in that, man. You talk to heroin addicts. There was a clip I watched not long ago, and the guy was interviewing a heroin addict that was still using. He said, if you had any wishes, any wish, that what would they be, you know? And normally a lot of them will say, you know, to get their family back and be able to see their kids again. And but this one guy said, my one wish would be if they could come out with a pill that I could take that would erase what I think the feeling of heroin is. It make me forget how that felt, how it feels. And right then and there, you know, so that stuff, Ian, man, you know, you talked about opioids and man, you want to talk about Satan's trick, man. That stuff there, man, it's it breaks my heart, man, to see these guys. It really does, man. They, you know, they don't feel good about any of these little things that you and I in recovery in life now that makes us feel good, you know?
Right.
You know, you see, I don't know, man. It just seems like it's always knocking on their door, man. You know what I'm saying? I felt that early on in recovery, the first year. I felt like there's always something trying to pull me back out there. But that drug right there, man, it just seems like it's, you know, it just doesn't. And that's why I think a lot of this, I want something to come of this, man, that somebody's listening and, you know, we could find out a way, what's some of the strong points in recovery that, you know, that some of these guys can really start tapping into. But, you know, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Randy, that there was a time you mentioned in your own experience, what happened was around that 8 or 9 months, you started to kind of click a little, right? That's the magic number. And I remember when I hit 6 months, dude, I had I forget what the term is. I'll try to look it up, man, and bring it into this discussion later. But it's this withdrawal, delayed onset withdrawal or whatever. Dude, at 6 months, dude, I felt as bad at 6 months as I did the day I stopped. And I went in, man, I was in tears, man. I went into Steve Goralski's office. I'm like, man, I don't know what's going on. And he looked at me and he goes, how long you got now? I'm like, 6 months. He goes, this is what it is. He goes, it'll pass, but you need to, you know, you need to keep on your program. And it did. It lasted maybe a couple days or something like that, and it went away. And
what was it, like a trigger? Like
no, it was an actual physical. Gosh, I wish I could remember it, man. It was a physical reaction, like, but it's actually you're re-experiencing the withdrawals that you had before. Oh man. It was pretty rough, but and it was unsettling because it didn't, at that point at 6 months sober, it didn't jive with the way that I was really thinking about other things. So it was like, man, I don't know what's happening to me, man. Am I relapsing? Is this what relapse is? You know? But Randy, I appreciate you coming on, man, and being part of this program with me, brother.
Absolutely, Ian. It's a blessing, man. I want to, you know, whatever I can do to be of service, man, and that's why I'm here.